This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time, we have the 2-1 yet to play a conference game Wisconsin Badgers traveling on the road to compete against the 13th ranked 2-1, 0-1 USC Trojans in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The forecast for Saturday in Los Angeles is expected to be 73 degrees, partly cloudy. USC opened up as a 14.5-point favorite. They are now laying 15.5, so the line has moved 1 point in the direction of the Trojans' favor. Both of these schools are coming off of losses. Wisconsin is coming off of a bye week that they received in week 4. In week 3, they lost to Alabama at home 42-10, where Tyler Van Dyke got injured and will be out for the rest of the season, so Braden Locke will be starting in his place at quarterback. USC is coming off of a road loss to Michigan in a 27-24 thriller, and they do also have some critical injuries. I do not know the status of Makai Lemon, but I imagine he is okay. As for Lake McCree, I'm pretty sure that he is out for the rest of the season. He was a big part of USC's offense, being their leading receiver and starting tight end. Again, this game is taking place at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time on CBS this Saturday to close out the month of September. And weirdly enough, it is a Big Ten Conference game. And I think what's very interesting about this matchup here is the fact that historically, so just take a pause. Back then, in the past, these two teams' identities were almost polar opposite. 2010's USC and until this season under Lincoln Riley, USC was all about skill position talent and quarterbacks like Matt Barkley, Sam Darnold, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can go on. All about skill position talent, all about speed, all about finesse, but they didn't win anything, really. With the exception of in 2022, when they appeared in the Pac-12 championship game, they won the Rose Bowl in 2016, they won the Pac-12 in 2017. Wisconsin was all about pounding the rock, with Jonathan Taylor and Melvin Gordon and their offensive line and Jim Leonard's defense being physical, never winning the Big Ten under Paul Chryst, but having that great 13-1 season. I will say right now, though, that these two teams are similar in a lot of respects, except as you will see, I think that USC has a little bit more confidence in their identity and a little bit of a higher ceiling. But this is a Big Ten Conference game. Wisconsin comes in with an awesome offensive line, also come in with former USC defensive coordinator Alex Grinch as their safeties coach. Both teams have suffered some injuries. They're coming off of games that just are gut-punching losses in their own way. Who's going to win? Well, I'm going to tell you who I think will win. We'll figure that out on Saturday, and I'm also going to give you my preview, prediction, analysis, the whole deal. But before we do that, I want you, yes, you, to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, to click that notification bell, share this video around to other college football fanatics who love the sport like we do and who are just invested in it with passion. We're trying to hit 20,000 subscribers. Hopefully we can have a miraculous next few days or week or 2 weeks and hit that at the end of this month in September or early October. When that happens, inevitably, we will be doing a giveaway, giving back to you, thanking you for helping to build College Football with Sam to be the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube, and we're aspiring to be the best college football channel on YouTube. Check out my Patreon page if you want to get notified when I release my Week 5 picks tonight, early tomorrow morning. It'll be for every Power 4 game, so every game featuring a Power 4 opponent, I will pick who's going to win, and I will pick the spread. Those are on my Patreon page. Sign up as an All-American or Heisman member to get access to those. And join our Discord server, because we talk college football 24/7. There's a dedicated Wisconsin and USC thread in our Discord server, because since College Football with Sam mainly focuses on the Big Ten, there are dedicated conversational threads for every Big Ten football team. You are not going to want to miss it. Join the Discord server via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment, or you can also find my Patreon page. And finally, just liking the video, subscribing, hitting the bell, commenting your prediction for this game. All of that helps you out, and it also helps the channel out. So thank you very much. But observing this game here, USC being favored by 15.5 points. Checking this out from a bird's eye view and looking at the forest before we get into the details and all the specifics, USC has been the better football team. And they have, I would say, performed to their expectations, maybe a little bit over their expectations. Meanwhile, Wisconsin has been, I'm not going to lie, somewhat disappointing so far this season. Wisconsin's only viewed as 0.7 points better than the average college football team in FPI. They're viewed as 5.3 points better than the average college football team per Bill Connolly's S&P Plus. USC is viewed as 15.5 points better than the average college football team in FPI and about 13 points superior to the average college football team in S&P Plus. S&P Plus is a little bit less reactive, and it goes more based off of tempo and a variety of factors rather than just points, which is what FPI primarily uses. And if you don't adjust for tempo, and S&P Plus does a much better job at that than FPI does, well, when you look at Wisconsin and how they beat Western Michigan, South Dakota, how they lost to Alabama, it looks like they are one of the worst teams in all of the country. No, I don't think Wisconsin right now is a good football team, but I do think that FPI may be underestimating the Badgers just a little bit. Wisconsin still plays good pass defense, in my opinion. Run defense is a little bit questionable, as we'll get into in a few minutes. But you look at this team, this Badger team, and they still have some talent to work with. They do have a great offensive line, and they have not exactly, from what I understand, have been playing to the air raid that they want to run. It's a little bit like last season, where you think that you have all the pieces, and then you figure out you don't, so you kind of pivot on your identity. It doesn't look to be another good year for Luke Fickell, not one bit, but this team has pieces where they can win conference games in the Big Ten. As for USC, I think they proved against Michigan that they are tough mentally, and that while they have a lot of work to do in regards of physical toughness, they're physically tougher than they were last year. And I also think that with Miller Moss, with Deuce Robinson, with Makai Lemon, Zachariah Branch, they have impressive team speed, and their defense with defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn is certainly improved. But SC right now is the better team than Wisconsin, at least through 3 games that they have played. And you also see this reflected in the points per play margin that both of these schools have. Wisconsin, on an average basis, scores 0.262 less points per play than their opponents do. The majority of this is the fact that Alabama just killed them. Alabama had fewer plays than Wisconsin and 35 more points. So that's simple math really right there. And as for USC, they score on average 0.195 more points per play than their opponents do. They blew out Utah State. They beat LSU in a close game, neutral field in Las Vegas on Sunday, September 1st in week 1. And they lost to Michigan in a close one on the road in the Big House. So USC, while not an undefeated team and not a dominant team, they're a good team. And they're a team that on an average basis is more efficient than their opponents. And that's them playing LSU and Michigan. Wisconsin playing Alabama. So both of these schools have played non-conference Power 4 opponents. USC has played a conference Power 4 opponent. I would say that given the schedules these two teams have faced, we probably know more about the Badgers and the Trojans than, let's say, we know about Indiana or Maryland or many of these other teams who have not played the same caliber of programs that Luke Fickell's Wisconsin and Lincoln Riley's USC have. You look more at this, they've both played strength of schedules that right now we're inside of the top 40. USC is the 38th toughest strength of schedule, and Wisconsin is the 15th toughest strength of schedule. I think only Michigan is ahead of Wisconsin in terms of strength of schedule in the Big Ten, but I could be wrong on that. There might be another Big Ten team who is further ahead. And Wisconsin is 56th in game control, which that adjusts for strength of schedule. Points per play margin is measuring dominance and game control and efficiency without adjusting for strength of schedule. Game control measures, well, those things, except they adjust for strength of schedule. Wisconsin's 56th there. USC is 39th there. So USC, again, being the better team, in my view, the more dominant team. And really, when you look at it, is USC an elite team? Is Wisconsin an elite team? No. But USC, once again, here panning out to be superior to the Badgers. And I think something else that's underrated in this matchup that I'll get into as this video goes along is coaching staffs. Both of these staffs I have a lot of respect for, especially the head coaches. Luke Fickell, what he did at Cincinnati was very impressive, building them into a group of 5 powerhouse that made it to the college football playoff. Lincoln Riley has made it to the playoffs several times, produced multiple Heisman winners, and he is an offensive savant. No one compares to him when you look at how he develops quarterbacks to play at the collegiate level. It's very impressive what he does on offense and at quarterback and all of these different areas. And you look at, just going back here to how these teams control their opponents, USC has a yards per point margin of 6, which is 23rd. Wisconsin has a yards per point margin of negative 5.9, which is 108th. The average scoring margin, plus 17.3 for USC, minus 9 for Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin's played the tougher strength of schedule, but the Trojans are ahead right now. The only thing that really benefits Wisconsin so far is the fact that they are coming off of a bye. And also the fact that I believe Wisconsin has a great offensive line. I think you look at their starting 5 and their depth, and they have NFL-level talent there. Jack Nelson and Riley Malman at tackle make up a great pass protection duo. Joe Huber, Joe Brunner, and Jake Renfro make up a solid, experienced, veteran interior offensive line. And behind them, you have Tawi Walker, Ches Malusi, Jackson Acker, and Cade Iacomelli. I think that Wisconsin, despite not having a Jonathan Taylor, a Melvin Gordon, a Monte Ball, and anyone else, I think that they can run the football effectively, and they have a good offensive line. And while they have questions on the defensive line, therefore questions in the trenches, their offensive trench play on the O-line, I think, is pretty solid. Against Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or these teams that are elite offensively and defensively, or at least near elite on both sides of the football, you're not going to see Wisconsin have a good performance in the trenches. You're not. But against a team like USC, who against Michigan showed that their defense has taken massive steps forward, but it's going to take more than a year for D'Anton Lynn and Lincoln Riley and Beanie Wiley to fix this defense and fix this team and make them more physical and tough and make them into a Big Ten team. I do think Wisconsin has an opportunity here that if they're going to win, and that's a big if because they're nearly 3-score underdogs, 15.5 points, right in between that 14 points for 2 scores and 17 points for 3. If they're going to win this game or have a chance, Wisconsin is going to have to run the ball, control the clock, limit the amount of possessions and scoring opportunities that Miller Moss, Deuce Robinson, Zachariah Branch, Woody Marks, and that USC offense have. For USC, they'll have to stop Wisconsin's rushing attack. And, well, got to force Braden Locke to throw, because if USC can force Braden Locke to throw and shut down Wisconsin's offense, which is really just running the ball at this point, outside of, well, Wisconsin's leading receiver, Will Pauling, then this could get ugly, and it could be a blowout win for the USC Trojans, because the only offense I see from Wisconsin is running the football. That's about it. Braden Locke is not as good as Tyler Van Dyke. No, Tyler Van Dyke was not an amazing QB, but he's better than Braden Locke. I watched Braden Locke last year at Wisconsin, watched him in the Alabama game, and watched Tyler Van Dyke at Wisconsin this year and Miami beforehand. Van Dyke's a better quarterback than Locke. So I think that the key to this game, the critical matchup to pay attention to that will decide this Big Ten matchup, which is just so weird, USC versus Wisconsin in the Big Ten, I feel like I'm pretty adjusted to it. I just say it's weird because I'm not fully adjusted to it, and I also imagine that many of you think that it's very weird, and maybe even some of you think that it's gross, so I want to, show some empathy with you all there. But the critical matchup is Wisconsin's offensive line, their running back room against USC's defense, specifically the defensive front, but I have a feeling D'Anton Lynn is going to want to stack the box like he did against Michigan and dare Wisconsin to throw, and the defensive backs need to do a better job of tackling against Wisconsin than they did against Michigan in regards to stopping the run. Offensively, I'd give Wisconsin tight end. I'd give them offensive line. USC easily takes the cake at quarterback and also wide receiver. I love Will Pauling. I think he's awesome, but the reality is that USC has Deuce Robinson, they have Jacoby Lane, they have Zachariah Branch, they have Kyron Hudson, they have Deuce Robinson, Makai Lemon. They have one of the better receiver corps in the country. It is inexperienced. That's really the only negative I have about that receiver room. That's the only thing that holds them back, I think, is their experience. And I think that's where you see with Branch dropping some of those footballs. Yes, he was a freshman phenom, and now he's a sophomore, and he needs to play better. However, at the same time, he's a true sophomore. He's still young. It's the same thing with Makai Lemon, with Jacoby Lane, with Deuce Robinson. They're all great players. Some may even be elite. I saw a post from Trojan Blade that talked about how Deuce Robinson's been consistently open, and he has been USC's best receiver this year. And I don't doubt that one bit. He was doing very well against Michigan, and Michigan had their best defensive performance of the year, and they have NFL players everywhere. So this USC wide receiver room is one of the best in the country. And if they can improve in some areas, they could be the nation's best. Miller Moss is a great quarterback, very tough. The only area where I'm a little bit conflicted is running back. I think that Wisconsin is deeper, but I also think that Woody Marks is a really good player, and I think Quinton Joyner could be a lethal Big Ten back. I don't know if I see that in Tawi Walker or Ches Malusi. Like the starting two for Wisconsin and USC, I would take USC's starting two, but then you look at depth, you got to give that to Wisconsin, and I'm just a little bit undecided there. If you put a gun to my head, I'd pick USC at running back, but I'm just going to leave it as a push because we're only 3 games in for both of these teams, a little bit smaller sample size than a lot of teams have already played 4 games. And yeah, the offensive line is really what determines the rushing attack. And you look at Wisconsin, I would take Jack Nelson, Joe Brunner, Jake Renfro, Joe Huber, Riley Malman over Elijah Page, Emmanuel Pregnon, Jonah Monheim, Alani Noah, and Mason Murphy. Wisconsin this season has rushed for 516 yards, 5 touchdowns. Ches Malusi's averaging 4.3 yards per carry with 3 rushing touchdowns, 200 rushing yards. They're not good at making explosive plays on the ground, but they are very good at consistently picking up 3 to 4 yards and occasionally popping it for anywhere from the 5 to 10 range. Also, when you factor out the 34 sack yards, they'd be closer to 4.5 yards per carry. And that's factoring in that Alabama game. And Alabama's defense has been fairly impressive this year. Wisconsin's leading receiver is Will Pauling with 191 receiving yards and a touchdown. Look out for Bryson Green, Vinny Anthony, former USC wide receiver CJ Williams, who transferred to the Badgers entering the 2023 season. Tucker Ashcraft is Wisconsin's leading tight end. And on USC's side of things, Miller Moss has 890 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, averaging 7.6 yards per pass attempt and completing 65% of his throws. USC has rushed for 414 yards, 5.1 yards per carry, and 7 rushing touchdowns. They're currently passing for 130 attempts and only running 81 times on the season, less than 30 attempts per game. And that's unusual for Lincoln Riley, who enjoys running the football. and wants to run the football. Lincoln Riley's offense functions best when they do have a great rushing attack, and I don't think that they have that this year. So a little bit of change, I think, for USC could be going on, in the sense that last year, I think they got more back to that type of balanced attack offensively. They passed for 461 times, ran for 362. In 2022, they passed for 515, ran for 473. You see that the change in the clock rules, where the total amount of plays is just far less, only with USC playing one less game. This year, it's kind of the same thing again as the previous two seasons, if not more extreme in regards to the pass, in my opinion. And, well, all I really got to say there is it's not productive or suggested for a Big Ten team to try and pass more than they run. The only reason USC would be doing that and should be doing that is if their passing offense is far better than their rushing offense. And I think as you go through Big Ten play, I think that's going to be abundantly clear that the non-negotiable USC has is their passing offense, and that they can score at any moment, and they're very explosive there. In the rushing attack, there is a lot to be desired. A lot to be desired. And that's not Woody Marks' fault. That's not Quinton Joyner's fault. That's on the offensive line. USC right now, they are passing on 63% of their plays, which is 7th, and they are running on a whopping 36% of their plays, or 37 if you round it up to the whole number, which is 128th. They're only running 5.3 yards per carry, which is 27th, and it's good, but a lot of it is on some explosive runs. It seems like USC and Woody Marks either get carries over 10 yards or less than 3. And there's not really anything from that 4 to 9 range. And then passing the football, USC right now, they are averaging 318.7 pass yards per game, which is 13th. They're 4th in completions per game at 28th. They're averaging 11.4 yards per completion, which is 71st. And I would expect that number to go up as the season goes on, because Miller Moss was pressured out of his mind against Michigan. Defensively, it's going to be a lot simpler. Both of these defenses are, I would say, respectable. I think they're well coordinated, but they do not have the personnel to be elite. I would take Wisconsin in the secondary with Hunter Wohler, with Xavier Lucas, with Ricardo Hallman. Wisconsin has 5 passes defended and 1 interception on the year. They did get torched by Alabama, but that's because Alabama was able to run the ball a ton and force Wisconsin to play with their DBs up. And consequently, when you have a player like Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe with his cannon of an arm, well, you'll get deep shots. And that was essentially Alabama's strategy. Run the ball, take deep shots, and they won, well, by a massive margin. Wisconsin's defense also has 6 sacks on the season, 1 fumble recovery. USC, meanwhile, has 2 interceptions, 6 passes defended, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 5 sacks. These defenses, again, are well coordinated. I think both Mike Tressel and especially D'Anton Lynn are great defensive coordinators. I'd say Lynn's a top 5 defensive coordinator. I'd say that Mike Tressel's top 20, top 15, maybe top 10, not quite at D'Anton Lynn's level, or Jim Knowles or Phil Parker, certainly, who's the best DC in the land. But he's a great DC. And the staffs that they have outside of Alex Grinch for Wisconsin in the secondary are pretty impressive as well, like the defensive assistant coaches. USC, though, I would take up front on the defensive line, and I would also take them at linebacker. I've been very impressed with what Eric Gentry has done so far this season. He has 2 sacks, a pass defended, 1 forced fumble, and a fumble recovery, and he leads the team in tackles with 26. Easily USC's best player on defense so far. Kamari Ramsey has a sack. Braylon Shelby has a sack. Anthony Lucas and Jamil Muhammad have done a good job. You look on the interior of the D-line, you got Nate Clifton for USC. As for Wisconsin, Ben Barton, Kurt Neal, Daryl Patterson, Jake Chaney, Leon Lowry Jr., and Jaheim Thomas. The defensive front for Wisconsin is just, is something that I am not impressed by. They run a 3-4, 2-4-5, and you honestly can see it in how they play, where they just do not have the defensive line personnel. And even if they didn't have the losses they had, to graduation and the transfer portal that they did after 2023, it would still be a mediocre defensive line by Big Ten standards. I think that Wisconsin would honestly benefit from running like a 3 or 4 every down defensive line and being a little bit bigger, compromising some speed in exchange for being able to better stop the run, because this is the Big Ten. The Big Ten's all about pounding the rock. It's about interior trench play, not just the lines of scrimmage, but guards, centers, D tackles are critically important in the Big Ten. And I think that Wisconsin, really at D tackle and even on the D line and at linebacker right now, does not have the players to have success on defense. And they've had some injuries at linebacker. Their linebacker room is really good, in my opinion, but they've suffered some injuries, and their defensive line with Ben Barton, Kurt Neal, and then Darrell Patterson, Leon Lowry Jr., John Pius, Aaron Witt function as outside linebackers, defensive ends. They have not had much success getting to quarterbacks. USC, meanwhile, they haven't had as much success as getting to quarterbacks as maybe previous year statistics would say, but Michigan didn't pass the ball all that much, so USC didn't have many opportunities to get to the QB. LSU is one of the nation's better pass blocking offensive lines, and I think USC is trying to be more fundamentally sound, and unlike Alex Grinch, who just wanted sacks, turnovers, or they gave up a touchdown, in exchange for less sacks, less turnovers, we're going to force more punts and give our offense more of an opportunity to control the game. So I prefer USC's front over Wisconsin's front, but I prefer the Wisconsin secondary over the Trojan secondary. I think these teams are pretty equal in the trenches. This is in exchange for the fact that I think on the perimeter to the boundary at receiver, and also factoring in secondary and quarterback, so skill positions, the backfields basically, and outside players for both the offense and defense, I think USC is a massive advantage. Wisconsin's slightly better at secondary. USC is way better at wide receiver, way better at quarterback, and I would say it's a push, or USC slightly better at running back. The trenches, I think, are pretty equal. I would take Wisconsin's O-line over USC's O-line any day. It's the same thing for USC's D-line compared to Wisconsin's defensive line. As for special teams, I would actually give that to USC over Wisconsin. USC has a good kicker, a good punter, and Zachariah Branch at punt returner is a complete non-negotiable. So in trench warfare and special teams, these teams are pretty close. I got to give the edge to USC at special teams. Trenches are fairly equal. Skill position talent, backfield talent, I would go to the Trojans. I think that Wisconsin has the better head coach. My opinion on this may change after this game, if I'm being honest. I think that Luke Fickell, just what he's done at Cincinnati, and look, his Wisconsin tenure hasn't been great, but Paul Chryst, I think, did more damage to that program than some people believe. And I'm in favor of giving Luke Fickell time. With the schedule they had this year, from a preseason angle of mine, as long as they went bowling, I thought the year would at least be a success, or it is what it is, but it's not a disappointment. They may not go bowling this year based off of how they've looked, but they're 2-1, and Alabama is probably going to be the best team they play all year. I just don't think you can count them out yet. And Lincoln Riley, for playing in an easier conference last year, which was Luke Fickell's first year, so just comparing their 10 years so far, and he's always had more than Luke Fickell has in terms of talent. Always. And look, I think that Fickell has built more physically tough teams. I think that he's developed better relative to talent. And I really like Luke Fickell. I like Lincoln Riley too. I think the moves that he made in the 2024 preseason showed that he can change, showed that he's a great coach. And my opinion on this may change after this game. But I do believe that right now I got to give it to Fickell as the better head coach. I would take USC's offensive staff and defensive staff in a heartbeat. I love USC's assistant coaches on defense in particular. and also defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn. I think USC is a top 10 defensive staff nationally. They just don't have the players to make this a top 10 defense. And offensively, Dennis Simmons is an awesome wide receivers coach. You got Lincoln Riley there, who's a QB guru and offensive mastermind. I would take the offense and defense for USC, their staffs, over Wisconsin and, Phil Longo and Mike Tressel. As for strength and conditioning, I've been more impressed with USC's strength and conditioning than I expected to be, mainly because I don't think USC's offense has been as explosive and has the same fireworks that I thought they would, and yet they found ways to win, and they have tackled better, been more physical, showed that they have the capability of being tough, and Wisconsin has really disappointed me on strength and conditioning too, the way they've looked in their first 3 games. So this is a push. That will definitely change. Whoever wins this game, I will probably give the nod to the strength and conditioning staff as being the superior unit, especially if Wisconsin wins. And I'm not picking the Badgers to win. I think the Badgers will compete. I think they will be able to score points and have some drives where they eat up clock, run the ball, punch it into the end zone. However, their defense is not good enough to hold back USC's rushing offense, and especially USC's passing offense. And it's in the Coliseum. It's a game where USC's fan base is going to be engaged. Wisconsin, yes, they have a bye, but a bye week only helps you if you have the proper personnel to win a game, and you're just getting that extra preparation and extra reps and also rest. Sometimes a bye week can even be a detriment because you're taking away the momentum that a team may have, especially if they're on a win streak. Regardless of that, I favor USC here. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win big. I have them covering and winning 38-20. And then USC will prepare for their next game against Penn State. Wisconsin, I don't know who they play next. I do think that I think it's Purdue. I think they play Purdue next, but I could be wrong. Let me double check that. Yes, they play Purdue at home Saturday, October 5th, after they play USC. So 2 home games follow this matchup for both of these teams. I think USC continues to build upon momentum. I don't think they lost much momentum when they were defeated by Michigan. For Wisconsin, it feels like they have to survive and advance in basically every game, and that doesn't match up well against a USC team who I think is one of the better teams in the Big Ten. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members and sponsoring this video and channel. Thanks to Chris Lane, Connor OH, Ismar Tyler 9, Chilton Cush for being All-American members and sponsoring this video and channel. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members and sponsoring this video and channel. Have a great day, guys. Make sure to check out my Patreon page, merchandise store, and also my Discord server via the links in the description and down below in the pinned comment. Have a great day. I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.